My name is Thompson Swan. I'm here again today with another controversial issue, the issue of tithes. I am going to expose or to bring about the truth and expose some hidden elements behind tithes. How did it start? Who is supposed to pay tithes? Who is supposed to receive tithes? But because of time, I will try to limit that to about 15 minutes part, 15 minutes part, 15 minutes part, of which some of the verses I will leave out. But just a big background of the payment of tithes and what I have noticed or I have listened to people speaking about tithes and the explanations which they are giving, they are so very vast and different from what is really in the Bible. So, like I always say, I always go back to the scriptures. Those are our guidelines. We go to the scriptures to find out what is being done today. Is it really what it is? Or there are some elements of deception in the collection of tithes? Because tithes is now being taken, right? But is it according to the Bible? Why are people paying tithes? Why... how is the tithes being used and how much was it supposed to be, right? There is a confusion between what is law and what is grace, right? When we go further deep into this expose, you'll be able to see where the deception lies. First of all, the introduction of tithes. The introduction of tithes was made by Abraham. Abraham is the father of the Jews, is the father of the Gentiles. Right? So, what did Abraham do? When Lot was captured, Abraham had to go and fight to get Lot back. But the spoils that he got from the fight, those are the spoils that he said, no, I have gotten this because of the Lord. Right? So he said, because I have gotten this, let me just pay. It was out of his own free will that he paid tithes. Right? And he only paid tithes once. Right? To Melchizedek. Right? He paid tithes out of his own volition to actually say, no, I want to thank God for what he has done for me. So I'll pay 10% of what I have earned. Right? The spoils of war. Abraham did not pay from what he had. Right? And Abraham did not even pay after he had paid. But at the end of the day, when you look at Abraham, you'll find he was very rich. And he also became rich. Out of his richness, the riches that he got, after paying tithes, he did not pay tithes. We have people today who are saying we are paying tithes on the basis of what Abraham did. Under faith. They're trying to use Hebrews 7, but Hebrews 7 also explains that the law of the tithing was a commandment of God. So when you ask the people today, they say we are under grace. So they are not paying tithes under law. They are paying tithes under grace. And if they are paying tithes under grace, then it means tithes should be a one-off payment. But what was the basis of that payment? It was the spoils of war. Are people getting into wars to get tithes? That's out of interest sake. Because that's where they are basing their argument on. To say people should pay tithes under grace because Abraham paid tithes. Right. Secondly, we go on to Jacob, he said, if God if he goes where he was supposed to go and comes back alive, right? He was going to give 10% to God, right? But this 10%, there is no indication in the Bible to actually say Jacob paid a penny. Jacob did not pay anything. So I don't know why people are now using Jacob, they are using Abraham to pay tithes. But Jacob just promised, but did he deliver? No. If we go to Abraham, it was all his own will. So people should pay by their own will if we're going by Abraham, right? If we are going to go by Jacob, we are just going to make a promise. There was no calculation. Huh? He just said, I'm going to pay 10%. Of what? Based on what? Right? So these are some of the issues which we should raise when we go through the Bible to get answers to before getting into any other issue. When we ask the same people who claim to be using either Abraham or Jacob, we find they are now using Malachi to threaten people to pay tithes. Yet Malachi was under law. I don't know how these people get their act based on. So this confusion element, we are going to straighten it out. How did God come about the tithing aspect? He had gotten it from Abraham to actually say, this is what Abraham did. Why can I not use the same on my people? This is what Jacob did. But Jacob did not fulfill his promise. So I'm going to incorporate the aspects of law, of the aspect of tithing into law. Another thing that we have that confuses a lot of people is they actually say Moses was given 10 commandments. And out of those commandments, those are the only 10 that are being enforced today. And yet there are about 700 or so in the books of Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and Numbers. Right? That was the law. That was what was written out by Moses in the book of law. The book of law is separate from Deuteronomy. The book of law is separate from Leviticus. The book of law is separate from Numbers. But the excepts, the things that were written by Moses were the ones that were exported to Deuteronomy, while he was trying to clarify the law as it stands. But Moses had a book, right, which had over 700 laws which were given by God to the people, to which the people agreed. Right? So when we're talking of tithes, we must actually go back to the law, because this is what God said. We cannot be said to be believing in God, and yet we take what Abraham did out of his own initiative. We cannot take what Jacob did, because it was just a promise, and yet he did not fulfill. So what's happening, the people, is they are hiding behind a finger to justify a scam. To me, tithing is a scam, which I am going to expose today, to actually say this is what is written in the Bible, in the book, and this is what is happening when we compare. Because we are saying we are honoring God, we give reference to God, and yet we are giving reference, honoring men in the form of Abraham and Jacob. So what we need to do is we must go back to the law, because the law superseded what Abraham and Jacob did. making it a commandment. So if we are going to be paying tithes, tithes is paid under law as an ordinance, and it is not paid under grace. That's why you find Jesus did not collect any tithes. Neither did any of the apostles collect tithes from the people. Tithes had its own purpose. Once it was collected to benefit a certain class of people, which was the Levites. Right? Yes, the Levites, when you go to Hebrews 7, this is just an introduction. I will give the verses as I go on, and you'll be able to see where I am coming from. It says they paid tithes in the loins of Abraham. So even the Gentiles, they paid tithes in the loins of Abraham. If they did that 10%, that loot, that spoil, right, which Abraham got, covered the payment of tithes for everybody. If he did not pay tithes later on, which means he paid for us. The Levites, yes, they paid tithes under their loins, right? But they later on under law paid tithes again. Though they received the tithes, but they paid the tithes. I hope we are still together here. God did not institute a payment of tithes upon the Gentiles. You'll find when you go on to Ephesians 2, as you go down, it was one of the ordinances that were abolished by the cross. I know this is going to be a shocking issue to you, but things like all those things that were done under the law, they were abolished by the cross, which meant there is nobody who is entitled to paying of tithes today. There is no more tithes in the offerings that are supposed to be paid. It's an extortion. People are being extorted under the pretext of the Bible to actually say this is what you are supposed to do because God has commanded. They actually say God has commanded, and yet they say they are paying because Abraham. Of course they are paying because Jacob promised, right? But did Jacob pay the tithes? No, there is no indication, there is no reference. Abraham only paid it once. What happened to his other later earnings? Because he died a rich man, right? He had everything. God had blessed him, right? But people are now being said, even if you are working, say, yeah, no, we're blessed by God, so you should pay, right? But were they paying according to, can you qualify, this is what I was given by God, then I'll pay 10% of what was given by God? This is the confusion. This is the work that's being peddled out there today for the people who are trying to enrich themselves, which Paul later on said God is their belly. But they want to take that money, use it for their own purposes, make their own businesses. So in this segment, in this as I move on, we're going to expose the same to find out what is really the truth. So it is called the truth about tithing.